Chapter 7, Training Employees. Our LOs. So we're going to discuss how to link training programs to organizational needs, explain how to access the needs of training, explain how to access employees' readiness for training, describe how to plan an effective training program, compare widely used training methods, summarize how to implement a successful training program, evaluate the success of a training program, describe training methods for employee orientation, onboarding, and diversity management. So, introduction, training. When you think about it in terms of training, acquiring new job-related skills, abilities, and behaviors. Programs range from formal classes to one-on-one mentoring. Takes place on the job or at remote locations. Should be linked to the organizational needs. So when you have training, first of all, you have training that is training that's based upon specific needs of your organization. Whether you have inexperienced people who are trying to gain knowledge for the first time, or you have experienced people who are trying to learn something new. Whatever else, when you design the training, it is always going to be designed to link up with the needs of what the organization, not only where you are, but where you're trying to go. Training linked to organizational needs. Importance of training. So important, more important than ever than due to the nature of the modern business environment. So when you look at the business environment today, you think it's so diverse, it's so much more than what it used to be. When you factor in new ways of doing things, new technology, a more diverse workforce. So there's a lot of changes right there. Change requires employees to learn new skills continuously. So when you have people working for you, they never get to the point usually where you say, I have arrived and I'm good to go. I don't need to be trained. As technology advances, as you can try to stay competitive in the workplace, people are going to have to continue to learn new skills. Growing allegiance on teamwork. Reliance on teamwork creates a demand for the ability to solve problems in teams and often requires training. So when you have all these different units and teams and groups, they need to be able to kind of operate kind of with autonomy to be able to make some decisions and do some things on their own. Ability to solve problems and continue to go. They can't always come to the leader or management when they have an issue. So you have to find ways to get these people so they can operate, like I said, with a little bit of autonomy. So when we look at the instructional design, so this is where it teaches skills and behaviors that help organizations achieve goals used by HR professionals. Includes assessments of needs, prepare for training, the training program, implementing the program, evaluating the results. So when you think about the instructional design, for every training that you've done in your professional life, there was instructional designers designed somebody like that with that skill set that was doing all these things right here to make sure what you were taking was relative and pertinent to what you need and what you were trying to do. That's instructional design. There are many people who have degrees in this career field, and it is a career field. Stages of instructional design. So when we look at it, we look at the different stages. You said assess the needs for training. So take a look at the training, assess the needs. Assess, okay, you see people say, well, we need to train our people on this. Okay, well, they're going to assess that to see what type of training do they need. Ensure readiness for the training. You can say you want to have the training and come up with it, but do you have the proper, not only the people in place, but most importantly, the structure and the support system to help them that is conducive to them learning. Plan and design training program. So what's the objectives? Who are going to be the trainers? What methods will you use? You have to know this. The objectives is something you got to know from the jump. And trainers. All trainers are just like people. All people aren't created equal. All trainers are not either. Me being a certified trainer for the United States Army and for the federal government, one of the things I can tell you, if you want people to get good training, you must have good trainers. The methods that people use. One of the things that they look at too is what type of methods are you going to use to reinforce this training or to help people grasp it. And just give you an example. You may have it might be in person, it might be virtual, You might do role play. You might do case studies. How you want them? What methods do you want to use? Implement training programs. So you got the principles of learning and the transfer of the training. So once you look at the principles of learning and stuff, understand what those are. And this is where the instructional designers are doing this. They're looking at the principles of the learning, the caliber and quality of that. And what are the principles we have here to work our core, it's like your core values. What are our principles for the learning? The transfer of the training. And how do you get people to actually grasp this training? And then after you've done it, what they want to do is evaluate to see where can they tweak it, make it better. Training linked to organizational needs. So you got a learning management system, LMS. So for Carolina University, our LMS is the Jenzabar system that we use to put everything from our classes, grades, forums, the work. That's our LMS, the learning management system. So these are going to be computer applications automated. It's going to make design the process more efficient and effective, and it can link performance management system to plan and manage training outcomes. So when you have an LMS, this is the place where it's like your database, where everything is put in it. And as a result of putting it in there, it can be extracted out as you need it. But this is how you stay on top of what it is you're doing with an LMS system. And everybody, all people will utilize those. Designers will use them, and particularly when they try to get things situated for people to start learning. And then people will learn how to log into the LMS to go through some of the training. The first element of instructional design is needs assessment. What are the needs? What is it you need? What is it this company needs? What is it they lack? Then what is this job? What is it that it needs to be better? So you have to look at the assessments, evaluate the organization, individual employees, tasks to determine what kinds of training, if any, are necessary. So then you're going to ask the question, organization, what is the context in which the training will occur? The person, who needs the training? Task, what subject should be the training cover? So this is the stuff you do before we get started. Before you start the training. These are the things that must happen first. Why? Because if you don't do this, you might be doing some type of training that's not as effective, or maybe not the right type of training, or something won't be in line. For instance, I'll give you an example. What if they trained the wrong people? They thought it was supposed to be this group of people, but it was somebody else. So you can see things as simple as that sometimes, but these are the mistakes you won't make when you go through and do the needs assessment. So organizational analysis. So the beginning of the needs assessment. Assesses training needs, the organization's strategy, resources available for training, management support for training activities. So when you look at this, you're thinking about what's the organization's strategy? And a lot of times the organization's strategy is usually a reflection of their leadership. I'll give you an example. If you have leadership that is really proactive and really aggressive, then the strategy will be too. If you have leadership that's kind of they see the glass as half empty and they're really cautious and they want to make sure that they go at a really slow pace to make sure they don't make mistakes, the strategy may reflect that too. Resources available. Then plenty of times you find out sometimes that there's training that people need, but they don't have the resources. Now, when you say resources, do you have the facility? Do you have the money? If you have to hire somebody. Do you have the right type of room to do the training that you want to do? I'll give you an example. It might be a room that everybody can sit in, but it might not be a room that works for role play. Management support for training activity. If you don't have this, a lot of times I can show you it's going to be an ineffective training program because management doesn't support it. If they don't support it, there's a high probability people are going to view it as a waste of time, and if they do go, they won't get anything out of it. The organization should show trainees how to use newly learned skills, knowledge, and behaviors on the job. Managers need to know how training will help them achieve business goals. So when you bring in new folks, you got to make sure, train them, start them off right. And this is something going to be very important too. When you bring them in and they got to get trained, you got to get them the knowledge and skills that they need, make sure I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, make sure you've got the right person or the right people doing it. If you got poor trainers that's actually doing it, then you're going to get a lower caliber of quality of knowledge apprehension by the new people. Managers have to know, how this training will affect their business goals. How do you you always HR. This is what my master's is in HR training development. One of the things we always say in HR is you got to be able to tie what it is HR does back to business goals or to revenue. So needs assessment. Employees training must fit with the organization's strategy and budget. Such training can only be successful if the managers are willing to help trainees use their newly learned skills on the job. So when you do the needs assessment, one of the things after they get the training, they get the knowledge, it's got to be reinforced. So if you take them out and you put them in this great training, and then when they finish the training, they go back to a job where they don't get a chance to use it for the next 6 months, I can show you that's wasted. It's something that needs to be real, and that will be up to the managers to ensure that these people are using the new skills or whatever it is they try. So timing can be very important. So personal assessments, analysis. So we look at the process of determining individuals' needs and readiness for training by answering 3 questions. Do performance deficiencies result from a lack of knowledge, skill, or ability? Who needs the training? Are the employees ready? So when you ask these questions, this is kind of what you get to, are there deficiency? Who needs the training? Everybody doesn't need the training. Who needs the training? And are the employees ready for the training? I've actually seen a situation before where you have people who felt like that they were voluntold to do training, they didn't think it was necessary, and they performed at a very low level doing the training. The primary variables are the people's ability and skills, attitudes, motivation, the organization's input, performance feedback, positive consequences to motivate good performance. So when people get involved in this process, HR, they're going to be involved with it from the beginning, at the very beginning, I should say before it starts in the planning, when it starts at the beginning, the middle, and the end, and because they want to find out what's successful or not. And a lot of stuff is factored into just by people, their abilities and their attitudes. Task analysis, conditions to be considered. So you have a job equipment and environment, time constraints, safety considerations, performance standards. So when you look at task analysis, do they have the right type of equipment? And next question is, okay, now are they in the right type of environment to do what it is you're asking them to do or what it is they need to do? Give you an example. You have something that requires people they're making a metal part for a car. Well, that requires they're going to be doing a lot of movement back and forth. Okay, do you have them in a place that's actually conducive to, particularly during the summertime, that cools them off enough so that they don't overheat in the environment? Time constraints. What type of time constraints do you have? You need to know I tell people you need to know your deadlines. You need to know how much time you're working with. Give you an example. If it's something that you need to get done in 3 weeks, but it takes you 6 weeks to get it done, that's going to be a major problem. Safety considerations. You can't move so fast through the training or through a task that you forget about safety. When you do that, particularly when you talk about manufacturing and things along those lines, you do that, or construction. When you get into things like that, where you're actually building or you're making stuff, this can be very serious, and it can come with consequences, legal consequences, if you try to do things to the point where you're actually compromising on safety. And when does that come up? When somebody gets injured. Performance standards. Okay, what are your performance standards? You got to have a standard. It's got to be, I'm going to throw this word out there, the gold standard. What is that? Everybody, you have to know what that is, because if you know what that is, now you know when people aren't meeting it. Employees are interviewed and a questionnaire is created about the importance, frequency, and difficulty of the task, determine which task will be the focus of the training. So one of the things when it comes to this that you will find assessors or instructional designers, HR doing, talking to the people who do the job. Don't just listen to what senior level management tells you or even their manager. Talk to the best source of information going to be for that is talking to these people, the questionnaire, but the people who actually do it and the person who's their direct manager. They're involved in it on a daily basis. So polling questions. So an examination of causes of performance deficiencies in a group or individual is called what analysis? And here's your answer. Person. Readiness for training. Readiness for training, a combination of employee characteristics and positive work environment that permits training. So, necessary employee characteristics: ability to learn, favorable attitudes towards learning, motivation. So this is one of the things when your readiness, is it right? Give you example. When I gave an example, that one group that felt like they were taking some training that they didn't need to take. Okay, that ain't readiness for training. Right now, you got people who really don't want to be there and now not really trying to learn. So you got to know that. You got to also take in consideration the ability to learn, and favorable attitudes towards the training stuff. I'll give you an example. If you have something that, let's say that you have a brand new engineer you just hired from university, just graduated. Well, you can't give him the type of stuff that you might give somebody who's been an engineer working there for 10 years. So you got to make sure he's got the ability to learn, but you're giving him something that's too advanced for him. So we want to make sure you gradually work him into it. And another thing too is help them keep a good attitude and keep them motivated. So you don't want to dump on them. Work environment. So positive work environment encourages learning, situational constraints, and social support. So when you look at positive work environment, encourages situational constraints to come up. A lot of times there can be things that can be mental or physical, whatever it may be. For instance, you may have some constraints. You may have some machines that you're using, and the machines can run for, let's say, in the course of 24 hours, they can run for about 12 hours, and that's a situational constraint right there. Yeah, you can make more, but you don't have machines that can run for 24 hours. Social support. People aren't robots. They're actually people. We're people. And when you have people, there are things you have people needs. Social support is something big. When you have peers that can support each other, that's very big. When particularly the direct manager can support people and help them with the social support, this is very big. When I see groups and teams and they're really, really close, one of the things that they do is they actually meet outside of work and do things together, go to each other's houses and stuff like that. That's a great way we talk social support. What managers should do to support training. So here's some things right here. I won't go through all this. I'll let you read through those right there. And a lot of this is self-explanatory. Planning the training program. So training objectives include a statement of expectations. So expectations. What do we expect to get out of this training? What do we expect it's going to help us do? Quality or level of acceptable performance. Again, you got to know what is the gold standard and what is below that. And now you got the gold standard, but you got to say what is acceptable performance. Everybody can't be an all-star, but they can be performing at a level that you say is acceptable, and you have to understand what that is too. Conditions under which the employee is not to apply what they learn. So when you think in terms of conditions of when employees not to apply what they learn, a lot of times that's usually timing. And like I said, you got to look at that. If you get people into training, let's say 6 months before they actually start doing what you set them to do to get learned, it won't be something that's going to be effective, because in 6 months now they're going to forget. Measurable performance standards. You want to make sure it's measurable. Why? Because when it's measurable, you now have hard data when things are working and when they're not. This also helps you to look in the areas to say if you want to improve stuff. You can, but it also shows you a record when you look back 2 years from now, what worked. Resources needed to carry out the desired performance. You got to have give people the resources that they need. It's a lot of times I hear people asked to do more with less. It's like, when I'm giving you a task for you and your people to do, bottom line is, but you laid off 5 people. So instead of having 20 people to do it, I only have 15 now. So do I have the manpower resources to do what you're asking me to do? In-house or contracted. So organizations can provide an effective training program even if they lack expertise in training, because they can go outside. Many organizations use experts for external. They bring them in like contractors or guest speakers or guest trainers, whatever else. Training administration is done by an HR professional. So you have people who work for the organization in HR within the organizations that can do some things, and you would want them to do some things. And other stuff, you might say, well, we're trying to do some cutting edge technology and this is new, or you're going to do something very new. You may want to bring somebody in who's got a subject matter expert in it. Categories of training methods. So, and I've had opportunities to use all of these in the course of me training leaders in the government, military, and corporate America. So you see the method, presentation methods. Trainees receive information provided by others. Hands-on methods. Trainees are actively involved in trying out skills. Group building methods. You got that. You have techniques. So this is lectures, workbooks, video clips, podcasts, websites, on-the-job training, simulations, role play, group discussions. I am a very big proponent of that. All three of these. Most people learn by doing. And the lectures and stuff can reinforce. If you're showing that stuff, then you follow it up with actually some hands-on stuff that works very well. Conveying facts and comparing alternatives. So you're looking at the applications. How did this work? What did we use? Teaching specific skills, knowing how skills are related to the job and how to handle interpersonal issues. One of the things too with that role playing scenario stuff, you get a chance to see some of that, and people get a chance to do some troubleshooting while they're actually before they start doing the task. Establish teams or work groups, managing performance of teams and work groups. This is something I tell everybody, regardless of your field of human endeavor. A lot of folks will end up working in some capacity on a team or a group. And that's just the way of the world right now, how things are getting done, regardless of what type of industry you go into. Training methods. So we got classroom instruction, usually a trainer lecturing a group, one of the least expensive and least time-consuming ways to train a group. Distance, trainees at different locations, and may involve video conference, various things. Interaction between trainer and audience may be limited. So if you look at the two, classroom is always going to be better. Now, and I'm not saying distance learning is bad, don't get me wrong. It can be good, but the most effective was going to be classroom, because you're in there with somebody, you can touch them, feel them, and they can do the same thing with you. And it's just a little something. But today, with the way things are going now, because we're such a global society, and a lot of organizations have people spread out around the world, different time zones, distance learning is something that everybody's going to get familiar with and everybody's going to do at some point. Use of instructional methods. So look what I'm saying right here. Online and computer-based. Look at that top. Virtual classroom webcast. Instructor-led classroom. Blended combination of methods. Mobile only. So when you see what's at the top, what predominantly people are doing right now. And it is stuff that's online and virtual. Training methods, computer-based training, low cost and allows for flexibility in scheduling. E-learning provides training via the internet on the organization's intranet. Electronic performance support systems provides access to skills, training, information, and expert advice as needed. So when you look at this computer-based training stuff, it is very good for one reason. Give you an example. You're working for an organization and it says everybody must go through this training, this certain type of training. Okay, they said it posts on this date and you have 4 weeks on this date when it ends, so it's flexible. It gives you an opportunity to go in and do it at your leisure. You just have to do it within those 4 weeks. And when you're looking at the electronic performance support, it provides access to skills, training, information, and expert advice as needed. This actually allows people to be able to access information, expert information, without actually having to hunt somebody down to get it. OJT, on-the-job trainer. This is a person with job experience and skills, guides trainees, apprenticeships, and internships. So this is something, this has been around for as old as dirt, this right here, and it is tried and true. And as someone who is a certified trainer, I will tell you, again, this is going to go back to something now. I think this is the third time I said it. That's a lot of times that's going to depend on who's doing the training. Not the trainee, but who's doing the training. OJT should include a policy statement describing the purpose of it. So when you put somebody on OJT, you'll walk them through. I've done this numerous times. You'll walk them through. You got to tell them what you expect of them, what's the policy, what it is they're supposed to do. Review everything that they expect. Realistically, have a checkoff list and keep these things. And usually they're done weekly or monthly. And at the end of that, you look at to see how much progress they made. And ultimately, you'll find that these lists, they have to go and check off everything before they can come off the OJT status. Typical jobs for apprentices and interns. So when you look at this apprenticeship, we see these right here: bricklayer, carpenter, electrician, plumber, nurse assistant, welder, internship. So you see with the apprenticeship, a lot of times this is hands-on type stuff. Internship, you see, it may not be. It can be, but it may not be. You see the accountant, doctor, journalist, lawyer, nurse, civil engineer. Training methods. Enable trainees to see the impact of their decisions in an artificial, risk-free environment. May use avatars. Virtual reality provides an interactive, three-dimensional experience. This is some very good experience and stuff, and I actually have gone through that in law enforcement and the military for tactical type training and situational type training. It is very good, and it's true. This is the place where somebody can make mistakes and not have negative consequences, but use it as a learning process. Business games. Trainees gather and analyze information and make decisions that influence the outcome. So you see this. You see this in all walks of life too. Corporate America, you see it in the military, you see it in law enforcement, you see all that, to include the business games. I can tell you at Fort Knox, U.S. Army base in Fort Knox, they have like these tank simulators, like games and stuff to help people learn how to drive tanks. Case studies, detailed descriptions of a situation that trainees study and discuss. So the case studies, a lot of times you're going to have situations where something has happened, they had a situation, something happened, had a result, and whether it be good, bad, or different, people get to look at that and use that as somebody else has already done this, so let me see what they did and then discuss it and make sure that somebody has a good grasp of what they just read. Training methods. Behavior modeling, an effective way to teach interpersonal skills with role playing and feedback. I love that. I love that because one of the things that he can tell you with that one, it requires you have to think on your feet in real time, and then you get to give feedback in real time too. Experiential programs, learning concepts, applying them by stimulating behaviors involved and analyzing activity, connecting analysis with real world situations. Adventure learning. This is a very, very a good way too of getting people involved, because one of the things I like to tell folks, most people are not going to make their living with their muscle. Most of the people are going to make their living with their brain, and you got to be able to think. And doing these experiential learning exercises and stuff, they can be real, and particularly when you tie them to real world type stuff, that it can be very interesting and exciting, but also very helpful. Teamwork. There's old saying, teamwork makes the dream work. So when you look at the most important features of organization today, is teamwork. Experiential programs include team building exercises like wall climbing, rafting to build up trust, cooperation among employees. And companies pay big money for this because they do understand it is about team. Realistically, if it works the way it should, in a lot of situations, people will have their immediate family that they're really close to. And if they're working somewhere else, the next group of people they should probably be close to is their team at work, because they're around them more than they are around their family. And when they go and do these other exercises, this is about building up camaraderie, trying to get people to like each other, to respect each other, and want to help each other. And if they do that, I'm going to tell you what will happen. Then they will help each other not fail. Training methods. So you got team training. Individuals work together to achieve a common goal. Cross training, coordination training, team leader training. So when you look at that, these different types of training. So individuals work together to achieve a common goal. So you see the cross training, coordination training, team leader training, action learning. Teams get an actual problem. They work to solve the problem. They commit to an action plan, responsible for carrying out the plan. This is a way of holding the whole group accountable. But by having them working together as a group, as a team, here's what you do. They get to bring their skills, all their skills and stuff together to work on a task at hand. Implementing the training program, principles of learning. Employees learn best when training links to current tasks. So they learn best. This is why I said you can't give them some training, don't let them use it for 6 months. No, as soon as you give them the training, let them start applying it and using it. Employees need the chance to demonstrate and practice what they have learned. They got to get their hands on it. They got to get their hands on it. Trainees need to understand whether or not they are succeeding. You have to give honest feedback to these trainees. If they're doing great, you got to tell them. If they're doing all right, you got to tell them. If they're doing bad, you have to tell them. But you got to give honest feedback. Well-designed training helps people remember content, and it does. Well-designed training reinforces, and it helps people retain knowledge and skills. Written materials should have appropriate readability. Okay, for instance, if you're bringing something out and it's here's something that this actually I had someone tell me one time. He said, I went through some training, but the print was so small in the book I couldn't read it, and I didn't have my cheater glasses. So if you were doing that, I want you to imagine if you were training a group of people and they were all older people, more mature workforce. You got to think about readability. I mean, did you give them a manual to read, and it's got fine print, and they got to struggle to read it because they have older eyes. That's a reality. Ways that training helps employees learn. So, training activity, communicate the learning objectives. So it basically gets a chance to perform it and give examples and just get to see stuff while they're doing it. Use distinctive attention-getting messages. These things this is what keeps people attention. You got to keep them interested. If you have something and it's boring, it's not interesting to them, you won't keep their attention. If you don't keep their attention, guess what they're not doing? Learning. Limit the content of training. Don't put the brain on overload. Because it can't absorb so much. One of the things I got to tell people too is take breaks periodically. If you're going to take breaks periodically, let people get up and stretch and do so, particularly if you resume training after lunch. Guide trainees as they learn. Okay, with these trainees and stuff, you look at them, everything that you do with them is methodical and it's designed and whatever else, and they'll just follow it. So if a good trainer is with them and a good leader is with them, or good OJT is with them, then they can help them not make mistakes because they can pretty much keep the guardrails tight until they feel like they can relax them. Ways that training helps employees learn. So you have elaborate on the subject. Present that material to them, and relate the ideas previously learned, and practice in a variety of contexts and settings. So elaborate some ways to provide training activity. Provide memory cues. Suggest memory aids. Use familiar sounds and rhythms, rhymes, and memory cues. Transfer course content to the workplace. So design the learning environment so that it has elements in common with the workplace. If it mirrors kind of what they are familiar with seeing with, that helps them. Provide feedback and performance. You got to tell people again. You have to tell people that this is one of the biggest criticisms I have about people who do training. A lot of times they're not factual and they're not honest. Sometimes what I don't want to hurt his feelings. It's not about hurting people's feelings. It's about helping people be good at what they do. Implementing the training program. Okay, so now you've got this training program. You have to implement it. So on-the-job use of knowledge, skills, and behaviors learned in training. So they get to do that. Now they get to put it in action. Implementation is strengthened by social support, technical support, and self-management. So this is where the OJT, the manager, and all come in, and others come in to ensure that someone's grasping this information, and they're there to support them to ensure that they need whatever they need, they get. Communities of practice provide peer support. So again, when you have those well-oiled machines like teams and groups, and they work together, they will provide communities of practice and support each other. Even if management doesn't tell them to do it, they would do it if they think they need to do it. Measure the results. So evaluation. So you got 3 questions you want to look at. Do you perform the task? How many times do you perform the task? To what extent do you perform difficult and challenging a learned task. So this is when you're talking to somebody who actually does the job, not somebody who manages or oversees it or somebody who used to do it. This is somebody who's doing it right now. So measures of training success. So training satisfaction, transfer of training, new skills, knowledge, performance improvements, return on investment. So when you hit this, you have hit the goal mark. You've got all that worked out for you, because all these things go into making a successful training program. And you can't leave one of those out. If you do, you're going to suffer. And return on investment is big. This is where HR and people in training can tie it back to, like I said, a lot of times with investment of money. You know, are we getting our money's worth? Measuring the results of training. So information such as facts, techniques, and procedures that trainees can recall after training. So if they can tell you some of these things after they've done it and they've been doing it for a while, that's been reinforced and that was good. Skills that trainees can demonstrate and test or on the job. Skills tests. One of the things that we were really big in the U.S. Army was skills tests. You know, you don't have to tell me you know it, show me. Because either they do or they don't. Trainee and supervisor satisfaction with the training program. When you see the manager, the supervisor happy with it, and the trainees happy with it. Now, here's where you're talking to both of them, and they both are giving you good feedback. That means you hit it just right. Not one of them, but both of them. Changes in attitude related to the training content. Some people will get to them. I've seen people who dreaded going to training before, didn't want to be there, but the attitude changed when they realized they really needed it. And it was going to benefit their career as well. Improvements in individual, group, or company performance. So you're looking at measuring it. You want to see these improvements. You got to. That's why you have to measure. You have to document all along the way. Did we improve? Here's what they want to know a lot of times is how much did we improve, or did we not improve, or did we, did it go something revert and go get worse? High return on investment. This is what particularly when you're talking about corporate America. They're always looking at the finances associated with everything, not just revenue, but money that they spend in investment in time and people. Are they getting the bang for the buck? Measuring the results of training, applying the evaluation. So helps the future decisions about the organization's training program. So once you get this and you've done it, now you have it permanent record forever. You can use it for various ways in different other capacities for the organization. The organization may identify a need to modify the training and gain information about the kinds of changes needed. Also, when you're doing this evaluation, that's what they'll determine. Where do we need to tweak? I've rarely seen somebody go through for the first time around and come up with a training program and not have to tweak stuff. Applications of training. So we look at orientation. So training designed to prepare new employees to perform their jobs effectively, learn about the organization, establish work relationships. Onboarding is an onboarding process that aims to prepare new employees for full participation. Conscious attempt to get new hires to identify and connect with the employer. So as you can see, objective is to familiarize new employees with rules, policies, and procedures. So you have the onboarding process where somebody's taking care of that. And see, a lot of times this is going to be, people who are associated with the hiring process in the HR. And then the orientation, you still may have some people that are involved in the HR, but you also may have some people from the field involved with that too, like managers and supervisors. Goals for a 4-stage onboarding process. So when you look at this onboarding process, it's compliance, understand company policies, rules, and regulations. Particularly in certain industries, in certain careers, this right here is extremely important because some people have to deal a lot with highly regulated industries or highly regulated products or services that they do. When I say regulated, I mean regulated by the government. Clarification, understand job and performance expectations. It's one thing you say, well, she's not doing what I want her to do. But when you talk to her, you find out that she didn't have a clear understanding what it was she was supposed to do. She thought she was doing it right. So that's a disconnect. So you have to have clarity when people start out from the jump to make sure that they understand exactly what they're supposed to do. The culture, understand company history, traditions, values, norms, and mission. Culture is something, it's intangible. You can't touch it. But I can tell you this. You talk about something, I heard an analogy. Culture can crush innovation like an 18-wheeler running over a tin can. If you got a bad culture, it can take down anything you try to do, depending upon how bad it is and where it's bad. Connection, understand and develop working and interpersonal relationships. You want to get people when they come in new, get people to. There's other people going to be there new. There's other people going to be there who's been there for a while. You want to get these people connecting with each other, connecting as people, and when they do that, that's when you can get some good results. That's going to be it for this chapter.